Hello ladies and gentlemen, you want to have your science notebook with you so you can take a few notes here. There's going to be more stuff to see than to write down. But anyway, on this homework, the question we're going to be looking at is what is a genetic mutation and how do they occur? Be sure to watch through this and I'll tell you when you definitely should write things down. So we're going to start with a really quick review. This is one of the early things we did. We looked at, well, where is genetic information stored? This is key to understanding how mutations work. We know it's in the cell, specifically in the nucleus. You have the chromatin or chromatin, which can condense into the chromosomes. And within the chromosomes, you have DNA, which holds all of your genetic information. So if you break it down bit by bit, if you look at any human cell, inside of there you have your chromosomes. Wrapped inside the chromosomes are the DNA. And within the DNA you have different genes that give you the traits that you see, or the phenotypes that you see. So something we haven't talked about yet is how does a gene cause an organism to have a specific trait? So how does a genotype end up being a phenotype? Now, we're not going to go into super amounts of detail here. We'll save this for biology in high school. But if you look at the strand of DNA, you can see that there's a code here, and these different letters stand for parts of the molecule that represent different amino acids. You don't need to write this down. This is just some general information. Anyway, part of the DNA would have a specific code which provides a code to manufacture a particular protein or a series of proteins. So this is just, of course, an artist's rendering of a protein. As we know, protein is a good thing for your body, and it actually helps accelerate chemical reactions, which cause cells to grow in specific ways. So the gene gives instructions for the production of proteins, which then tell the cells to grow a certain way, which can come out in all the different traits we've been talking about. So this is just another summary of what we just said there. You have your DNA, which has chromosomes, which have genes. The genes help manufacture certain proteins, which help your cells grow in a certain way, which then gives you the body that you have. And I like this little slogan here. DNA, everyone talks about that, but really proteins do all the work. The DNA just gives instructions for the cells to build certain proteins. Okay, here's where you want to jot some stuff down. You know how to set this up, so pause the video if you need to. So mutation, a permanent alteration or change to an organism's DNA. So you have, and we'll go into this in more detail, what this looks like. So here's some examples of a mutation coming out as a phenotype. I put this one in here, heterochromia. We have a couple students who have this, that they have different colors on the iris of their eye. This is a slight mutation in the DNA that just causes the cells to grow in a specific way, having these traits. Red hair, actually, if you look far enough back, it was a mutation. Baldness, my own personal mutation that's been passed down through generations. So what this is, now if we look back, and again, you don't need to write this down, you can if you need to, or if you want to. We know mitosis, when cells separate, at different phases, it makes replicas of the chromosomes. So that's important to understand. That also happens during meiosis, where you have sex cells being divided. You know, eventually the sex cells go down to half the chromosome numbers, and we know that that gives offspring genetic differences from their parents. But the reason we're bringing this up is it has to do with what can happen to the DNA in the replication process. So sometimes when DNA is being replicated, so both in mitosis and meiosis, copies of the genetic code are being made, sometimes little glitches happen. Sometimes there are little errors in the amino acids that get copied, and that can then start getting passed on into other cells. So that mutation, that little error in the DNA sequence can get passed on through throughout the cells. So think about this. If the DNA, parts of the DNA give specific instructions on how to build proteins, and those proteins then help the cells grow in certain ways, if there's a mutation or an error or a change in the DNA, that's going to cause a change in a protein that gets produced, which can cause the cells to grow differently. So mutations, we all have them. I hope this video isn't scaring you at all because a lot of them have a neutral effect. There's no effect on some mutations. So interlacing fingers, for example, if you interlace your fingers and your right thumb is on top of your left, that was a mutation long ago. So a lot of the recessive traits that we're talking about were mutations. They're little mistakes that happened. Humans, we wouldn't be where we are right now without mutations. And actually, we'll get into this at a second part of this unit later in the year when we talk about evolution. Organisms need to mutate in order to keep surviving and being successful. Here's just some neutral ones. Attached earlobes, for example. Red hair is a neutral mutation. It's not harmful. Some can have a positive effect. Opposable thumb. So this is where you can take your thumb and touch the tip of each of your fingers. That allows you to do a lot of things with your hands. Camouflage, which a lot of organisms have. That's a mutation that can have a positive effect. We'll look at, some of you looked at the moths, that a mutation caused some of them to have darker wing colors, and that they help them blend into the trees better than the white ones. Large cranium, which we humans have, allows us to have a larger brain capacity. They can have a negative effect as well. Cancer is a mutation, so something has caused an error in the DNA and it's causing the cells to grow in a harmful way. Sickle cell anemia, color blindness, for example, those are all mutations that can have a negative effect on the organism. Some of the causes. Exposure to toxic material like cigarettes, the carcinogens in there can affect the DNA in cells, and if it does, that mutation can get spread through other cells as the cells replicate. UV light, so very important, of course, to wear your sunscreen, not overexpose yourself to the sun, because UV rays from the sun can damage DNA, and that's how skin cancer would happen. And sometimes just in the DNA replication, sometimes, nature makes mistakes, and sometimes those mistakes are beneficial, sometimes they're harmful, sometimes they have no impact on the organism. Make sure you have a decent idea what mutations are. We're going to be exploring this in class the next time.